Spoilerin time. And I mean it this time. We are going to spoil the crap out of Interstellar last. So if you're like, I don't want to be, wait, well, it'll be at the very end. We're also going to spoil episode 11, season 3 of The Shield, and episode 5, season 1, Twin Peaks. Brian Brushwood, how the hell are you?
You know what? I am Brian Brushwood by virtue of my parents' naming ability. Hey, man, I watched Twin Peaks, episode 5 of season 1, and there was sort of a meta moment. And I want you to know, because you said the tastiest parts are in season 2, I got a real sense. I'm doing my best to watch it in context, remembering that it's 1990s and the kind of stuff that it's up against in the time. But having said all that, and one of the things that hit me is that the cast is, it seems to me, maybe I'm misremembering, but there's a lot of people in this. And my guess is the cast is bigger than most shows of its type in 1990s. You know, it's like the way you and I think of The Wire, and it's like, man, there's a lot of characters that I come to know in The Wire. My guess is that's a big part of the appeal for Twin Peaks back in the day, because 5 episodes in, I'm still trying to figure out people's names and why I know them and why I should care. And as was evidenced when Bonnie walked in and said, "What are you watching?" I said, "Like Twin Peaks." And she watched for like 3 minutes and she goes, "I have no idea what's going on. Who's this guy?" And I was like, I think he's the boyfriend. And she's like, "Of who? Of the girl who died?" And it was like, "Who's this guy?" Well, I think he's the guardian of, I don't know if she's an heiress or I think she runs a factory but doesn't really. And then now she's trying to. And then who's that guy? That's a guy that has one arm.
Wait, a guardian?
Oh, I don't know. Like whatever the story is about the Josie, whatever.
Josie was the wife of the guy who owned the mill, who is the sister of Catherine Martell, Piper Laurie, who is the wife of Jack Nance's character who found Laura at the beginning. But right there, that explains exactly what you're talking about, right? None of these relationships, it's not just a huge cast. None of these relationships are simple, right? It's like, oh, that's Laura's boyfriend. Well, actually, Bobby was Laura's boyfriend, but he was cheating on her with Shelley, and Laura was cheating on him with James. But even with James, she was going around doing the, nothing is explained simply.
I'm so glad that you grok what I was trying to say, because that is exactly how it feels right now. And it's one of those things where it's like, I trust a recommendation, and I trust, especially in historical context, that I eventually will get there, and I'm going to keep plowing forward. But for right now, I'm hella confused, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a show you have to pay attention to, a la The Wire or Lost, or, you can't just kind of have it skimming on in the background and go like, oh, well, there's only 5 or 6 characters. I can kind of figure out what they've been doing if I miss.
But also like The Wire, I was guilty because I gave up on The Wire the first time and then tried it again, and I kind of allowed myself to be doing other stuff on The Wire, which may be why it took me longer till it roped me all the way in. But it eventually got there, and I trust that the same thing will happen with Twin Peaks. So
now this is the episode where they go off into the woods to investigate Jacques Renault's cabin, right?
Yes.
And then Audrey has gone to One-Eyed Jack's.
Yes.
And she's sneaking into her dad's, the prostitution place that her dad owns.
Correct. That is all. Those are all things that happen. Yes. Again, the context of which, and I can tell it's so weird because I know you're on the other side of all this and you know the significance of these moments, but me kind of cast adrift. I'm not quite there yet, but we'll get there.
Yeah. So the only thing I'm curious about at this point is, does the feel of the show appeal to you at all? Does it like the sort of like
the dreamlike quality
in the woods, and there's a mysterious supernatural aspect, but you've got this FBI agent who's trying to apply sort of a science of a style to it, etc.
Well, but then also followed by complete and utter nonsense, like he's allocating FBI or resources based on the fact that somebody drew a guy who saw in a dream, and it's like moments like that take me out of it. I assume that a lot of this, that again at the time was very groundbreaking, just isn't so now. And so again, the analogs between your experience on The Shield and my experience with Twin Peaks,
there's also just a matter of taste. Like, I approach Twin Peaks as a fairy tale, right? So when he like draws the character from his dream, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool.
Well, no,
like,
and I don't mind it. It's just I'm trying to find a space for it. I'm not just in love with it being. If I think of it as a dream, and everything's got to be dream logic, I enjoy it a lot more. Not quite a fairy tale, but just a dreamy Sideways universe.
And that's, it's a very interesting because I've already watched them all the way through and watched Fire Walk with Me again. Fire Walk with Me was very David Lynch. He had full control, right? Whereas he didn't have to work with the networks. He didn't have to push through past censors or deal with primetime restrictions. And Fire Walk with Me becomes much more bad dream. Like, what's interesting about Twin Peaks on TV is it's Lynch's dream-like way of doing things forced into the light a little bit. So
forced to mesh with the reality of how television was made. Did you get the vibe that Twin Peaks came out 10 years too early, or came out at just the right time?
I don't know. I mean, I think in a way it came out just the right time. Depends on what you want. If you're saying, oh, if he had put it out 10 years later, it would be more enduring, perhaps, so you wouldn't see the seams as much. That's absolutely true. But at the same time, he pushed the boundaries forward on what could be done on serial television, for sure.
Yeah, you could say he paved the way for the kind of stories that we got with Sopranos and Mad Men. And,
but I just love the world. I just love that, weird, small, quirky town with Log Lady and cherry pie and black coffee, and I don't know. That's what I love the most about it is the style of it.
Well, and that certainly I can relate to, because when I reread the entire Dark Tower series for the third time, it was like I didn't care that I knew all the characters and everything that was going to happen. I just wanted to soak in the strangeness and the dreamlike quality of, like, I remember spending the first half of that book wondering if it was the afterlife or something.
Oh, and you know what? The ending of the Dark Tower series very much reminded me in some ways of that feeling from Twin Peaks, not of the storyline at all, but just that sort of sense of you're peering into dreamland, and the question is it really dreamland?
All right, well, hey man, I want to save time for Interstellar, so I gotta hear how things are going on the Shield for you.
Episode 11, season 3, Strays, maybe the best episode I've seen yet.
Oh, hells yes! Remind me of which ones this was.
This is the one where Vic discovers the money laundering ring is outside the crime community. So he's dealing with his son on the one hand, where he told the therapist to go away. Now his son's falling apart. Meanwhile, he's dealing with Shane and telling him, like, she's going to leave you. So you need to clamp down. He's dealing with trying to make sure that Shane's girlfriend's mom keeps her mouth shut about where the money went. He also finds out about a money laundering organization that he's sent to crack down on, and they do a sting where they have Danny go undercover, and it finds out, oh well, so this money from the money train was flowing through here, which is both unsettling but also giving them ideas. And at the same time, the sideline story, Wims and Wagenbach, they're always good. They always have interesting stories. They get better as it goes along. This was killer, partly because Agent Coulson was the cuddler.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, it's Clark Gregg.
Oh my God.
Which, when they arrested him at the very end of the last episode, I didn't recognize him. But when they brought him in for questioning, I was like, God, that guy looks like Coulson. And then as soon as he opens his mouth, I'm like, oh, it's Clark Gregg. Clark Gregg is the cuddler. And a fantastic interaction where he's like, what'd you read that from a book? And you're like, oh, he's going to try this. But he's like, the character who is the cuddler rapist is just very sociopathic, not psychopathic.
Right.
And that's an interesting difference. It's like, no, this guy isn't just a killer who enjoys killing. In fact, he doesn't really enjoy killing. He enjoys something else that unfortunately you can only get with killing. And so he tries to only kill people who are old because at least they're at their end of their lives. And he doesn't think he's really he's thought it through. And you can see Wagenbach like, wait, you don't fit any of the profiles that I've ever studied. And of course, there's the chilling moment at the end where Wagenbach is being woken up by this cat.
Oh, yes.
In his yard. And he goes out and entices it in with food and then picks it up and chokes it.
That is a dark, dark moment. And that is the moment that, for me, I realized that not one character in this show was going to be without flaws. Yeah. And, because Wagenbach, like, if he had a flaw, it's that he didn't have a spine. Everything else about him was
little
good. He
spineless,
was
maybe a
smug.
little too, too taken with his own prowess, maybe.
Yes, but then all of a sudden, like that was a dark, dark thing. But weirdly, like that's so also within Wagenbach's character to try to understand. He prides himself on someone who sees in the mind,
Right?
And when he's
Yeah,
presented
exactly.
with someone that doesn't match anything in the books, he's like, well, I guess I guess in that kind of sociopathic way, he's like, well, I guess this is what I have to do to understand.
And the look he has on his face, such good acting, is a look of horror at what he's just done, mixed with understanding.
Yeah, well, or with
I just figured something out. Okay.
and maybe a hint of, if I'm remembering it right, like pleasure at having solved it, or like
yeah.
like,
That's
okay,
kind of
now
what I'm going
now
after.
I
That's
get
sort
it,
of like,
yeah.
oh, okay, yeah, I get it now.
Oh, yeah. And I will say, I remember at the time thinking like, oh, does he go crazy now, become a serial killer? But really,
Right.
that's just that one vignette. It doesn't
Spoilers.
become a,
But yeah, no, I kind of figured it was just that one vignette, but they definitely leave you wondering, like, well, are we going to get Wag? And at this point, the show has done enough things similar to that where you're like, oh, I thought this guy was this way, but look, he's that way. Like from episode 1, right? Where Vic Mackey kills a cop, and that comes back at this point. Where Shane's like, you're not going to kill me, are you?
So I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a graph where they and I hesitate to even let you look at it, although you're probably going to start noticing now that I'm mentioning it. Somebody graphed out IMDb ratings per episode and trends per season on The Shield, and I posted in the chat if the folks in the chat wants to look at it. And this episode, because you mentioned how much you loved it, it was the best one. It's one of the highest rated up until this point. It later goes even higher, but there is a dip at one point, and it's a large dip. I did not notice that dip. Like, I don't understand why people didn't like that season. I remember that I said, oh, I tipped something. It's one season underperforms. I never noticed it. I like the season just fine. And I wonder if you'll notice it or if it'll resonate with you or not, because I thought they were all good.
All right, let's talk about Interstellar. Everybody, we're going to give you a little extra warning. Leave the room, turn off your podcast, pull to the side of the road, yank the headphones out, whatever you need to do if you don't want to be spoiled on Interstellar. Because, man, like Patrick Beja was in town. He's the host of the Rendezvous Tech. He's a contributor on Daily Tech News Show. He was staying with me, and we went to see Interstellar last night. He's like, I want to see it. I can't see it because I promised my wife I would wait until I got back home to see it. So please don't say anything about it. And he wasn't the first one. There's been lots of people, like Chad Johnson, who was on Cordkillers earlier, is not with us on Spoilerin time in a large part because he wants to see Interstellar and he doesn't want to have any piece of it spoiled. So there you go. What did you think of Interstellar, Brian Brushwood?
Loved it. Loved it. It's not without its, I don't want to say flaws in storytelling. I'll say flaws, difficulty, challenges. For me, in order to go along for the ride, I had to swallow some pretty big, unbelievable pills, including the fact that, and we talked about some of this on the Weird Things podcast. In fact, we spent 40 minutes talking about this movie on the Weird Things podcast, including the fact that mankind had lost its pioneering spirit, that there is a giant conspiracy cover-up, and that, NASA still existed as a bunch of underground rebels.
I didn't think they had to go so far as to say that the moon landing is faked as in the textbooks. That seemed like, that took me out of it a second. I can believe that humanity has lost its pioneering spirit and they've defunded NASA, but to make it that controversial didn't ring true to me.
Andrew defended it, saying that that's something that actually happened within the last 100 years. If you lived in communist Russia in the 1930s, that's something they did. They actually changed notebooks and changed history or whatever.
Changing history books is not what took me out of it. The fact that the government would find it necessary to change the official history to read that the Apollo landings were fake to bankrupt the Soviet Union just didn't fit.
Yeah,
I didn't quite see the need for that. If they wanted to defund NASA, there were easier ways to do it than to try to rewrite history.
Well, especially in an age of Reddit and the internet, it's just hard to believe that you could keep anything a secret anymore, right? Although somebody had said that, they never specified the time period of Interstellar. Somebody said that it's our current time, but it's just an alternate reality. Where it's like there is no internet, and so you can't.
And in that
keep
alternate
secrets.
reality, the moon landing was faked.
And and in that alternate reality, Matthew McConaughey is not an actor, but instead a farmer, and he has a daughter. So that was a bitter pill. Also, it was a bit of a surprise. And again, you can massage your mind around it. The idea that they would get through, that they would descend down to land on a planet knowing that the water was shallow enough for them to stand 3 feet deep, and yet somehow not know that that's not a landmass but a tidal wave.
Didn't notice the waves on the way down? Like, nobody scanned? Nobody observed? I had the same thought.
Again, flaws. I can see all of that.
Kind of flaw that I can forgive, because it's like, well, you could have tightened that up. But okay, it was a great scene and great tension, whether they're going to survive and whatever. I'll let it pass.
The only other thing, and I think this is a missed message, is people are like, oh my God, the point of the movie is that love transcends time and space. And I was like, no, that was never the point of the movie. Also, if that's the case, then the chick who swears that love transcends and that they need to go to that planet so that they can find her lover, who she knows is there because love transcends space, my guess is she wouldn't show up and have to dig him a grave if that was the point of the movie. The point of the movie is that it doesn't. He was making an observation in that moment like, oh, wow, what do you know? Look at me. Here I am transcending time and space. And it's because I love my daughter. So I guess you could say that was a situational moment and not the point.
I did not feel like that's the way they meant it. That's the way I'm going to take it. You've summed it up very nicely to make me comfortable with it. It definitely a few times felt like they were saying, look, science, but really sometimes science isn't enough. You've got to have the human element. And that was another one of those times. There are less egregious times where he's like, I'm going to take this under manual control. And I'm thinking like, that's the stupidest thing you can do. Lining that thing up is entirely math, and your robots are going to be much faster and much more accurate than you. But okay, I get it. You got to prove that the humans still have the spirit.
Well, I like that you brought up the human element, because that is the strongest element of this movie. It soars. Now, keep in mind, full disclosure, I watched this movie about a grown-ass man who leaves his 10-year-old daughter while sitting next to my 10-year-old daughter who loves science.
I thought of you actually during those scenes. Yeah.
It was the first one of the first PG-13 movies my daughter's ever gone to. She saw Guardians of the Galaxy, and I had to have a talk with her on the way there, saying like, well, this is science fiction. She's like Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm like, not like Guardians of the Galaxy. Let me explain. There's this genre of movies called drama. There'll be parts you laugh, but there'll be parts where you're probably gonna end up crying, but you'll enjoy it as a whole because it's a dramatic, amazing thing. 3 times during that movie, like the whole place was dead silent, and I was worried about being ejected from the theater because my daughter was sobbing so loudly next to me, just like but it was amazing in that regard. The plot device of time, flip-flopping or being, an hour being 7 years or whatever, and him getting back from the mission, racing his ass off and having to watch the heartbreaking collection of videos of his children growing up, growing old, and giving up on him and his memory is just devastating. And I loved all of that.
Yeah, there's some amazing moments. That is one of them. The docking scene where he's like, you know what, we're going to dock anyway. Very tense. Even if you're sitting there thinking they should, like I was, they should let the robots do it. They're like, well, but they're not. I hope he makes it. The chase against the wave was incredibly tense. There was good moments. I don't know why it didn't affect me as much as you. And that is not to say that I didn't like it. I enjoyed it a lot. I don't know if I loved it, though. And Eileen and I both came out of the theater like, that was good, but we're not blown away the way we were after, say, I don't know, Inception, as an almost direct comparison. There was something about that movie that defied our expectations. And I think this was a very well done movie. It didn't shock me or surprise me in a really unexpected way. I kind of felt like, not that it was on rails or anything, but it went the places that I was sort of expecting it to go as I watched. And not in a way that I was disappointed, like I hope they don't go there, but sort of like, oh, well, I would take it here because that would be really cool. And they did that, and that's fun.
To me, it didn't even feel much like a movie or the way I think of movies. It felt to me like a classic science fiction novel. It was long and detailed.
Yeah.
In a science fiction novel, you go in expecting there to be weak or questionable plot points because there are some big grand ideas about the future that the author wants to express and or a puzzle that he wants you to try to solve that occurs to him. And we're so accustomed to that we don't really think about it. They did the same thing in Interstellar, but in a movie, it's a little bit different. For example, if you've ever read Haldeman's The Forever War, that was very much the same idea. It was about a soldier who goes and he fights a war, but it's a really long way away, so he spends a lot of time at light speed. By the time a bunch of people die, he comes back. 1,000 years have passed. All of society has changed, and then he goes off to war again, comes back, and all of society has changed again. Maybe it was because I had that mindset that I was more comfortable with the questionable side beats. For example, man, I've never had a movie robot that I did a bigger 180 on than Tarzan Case. I started off thinking they were the dumbest thing I'd ever seen.
Tars particularly, because not only did he look dumb at first, but he's acting like a Marine sergeant. I mean,
yes.
How many cliches could we pack together at that point?
Yeah, exactly. I loved so much personality. Case had like 4 lines, including he does most of the talking.
Yeah, right.
Nailed him.
Certainly not more than a dozen, if that.
Yeah. Now so anyway.
Tensor Guy, by the way, says the physics was amazing. The chemistry was crap.
Look, don't be that guy. And let me stand on my soapbox, okay? I do not understand this desire among the scientific elite to punish Hollywood for the crime of trying to get as much right as possible. I've never seen a list of 20 things wrong about the physics of Star Wars. I've never seen that I hear people talk about, Star Trek inspired a demonstration. It's as though movies like Interstellar and Gravity, it's as though they feel threatened by Hollywood trying to tell these concepts.
I don't take
and
it
they need
that
to
way.
prove something. I hate it. It's not
I
healthy.
take it as and I don't love it either, but I take it as like, well, they said they were going to be scientifically accurate. Let's find out how close they got. And I know that's not always the way it's meant, but that's the way I read it, because I would like to know that. I'm like, okay, what stuff did they have to fudge for the sake of the story? Because you very rightly point out some space opera authors, and I'm going to correct your usage because there's some really hardcore people out there that if they hear this will send in the emails to correct us. Space opera authors will fudge the science in the sake of the story, and it's fine. We love many of those authors greatly. Hard sci-fi authors are not supposed to do that. And it's the people who love super hard sci-fi where you like, nope, only science, only plausible science, who write those lists, because they're hoping to see that movie. That's going to be their ultimate movie that they love someday that gets all the science right. And so when you get something like Gravity or Interstellar that corrects some of the common fudging and says, no, actually, we're not going to have big explosions. We're not going to have sound carrying in a vacuum. We're at the very least, and we're going to get a lot of the other physics and the motion right. Then they're like, okay, how close did they come? We need to measure the yardstick. I'm okay with that. When they get angry about it, like, and therefore the movie sucks, then I'm back to your side very quickly. Like, no, the movie doesn't suck.
Man, you know what's going to happen is that movie's going to come out, and then there'll be someone like, 20 things wrong. Number 1, there's no way all of this could have happened in 2 hours. You're telling me, where did the time go in between this? He gets in the car, and then is suddenly in a different town?
That's how I feel about Slacker, the movie about Austin. I'm like, wait a minute, he was just at the Continental Club. He walks around the corner, and he's in North Austin? That can't happen.
Well, and I think you nailed it, actually, is that this is a case where you're pulled out of the movie because you know Austin, right? And it's an involuntary pull. You didn't set out to disassemble slackers, but all of a sudden it did something that can't be done, and so it popped you out for a second. Kind of like when I was watching Predators, watching them on an alien world. They turn the corner and suddenly they're at Pedernales Falls State Park, just down the road from me. Right. And I was like, I didn't mean to be taken out, but I was taken out. And I can understand being taken out of the movie, but quit taking a dump on people who are trying to get it right. It's like they're trying to inspire a generation to love what you love and to care what you do and to go into your field. How about you give them a hand instead of a backhand? That's what I say.
What I did like about it is they took on the challenge of having to build two entire universes essentially, I'm tempted to say it's two different movies, and it kind of is, but it's not really. They built a post-apocalyptic scenario, right? Earth is running out of food. Baseball become a really easy sport to watch because there just aren't as many people around as there used to be. And that's a really interesting world, right? Like, how will the Earth survive? Which the reason I don't want to call it two different movies is that sets up the second universe, which is space travel, through a wormhole to distant worlds, dealing with the effects of relativity, which is really, really a fun world to live in as well. The world of that spacecraft, which wasn't ultra futuristic. It was very much near futuristic with, a little bit of extra technology hand waving to say, well, there's a wormhole and we're going to go through it. And don't worry about that. But everything else is going to have switches and levers because solid state is, really good, reliable technology.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, again, like, to me, I just think of, I'm so excited because so many of the things and the concepts that I loved, and again, specifically the Forever War, although they touched on themes that a lot of other properties have done and a lot of movies have tried, elements like, there's so many examples where it doesn't work. The movie Millennium is about Chris Christopherson discovering that humanity is traveling back in time to save itself because things are bad in the future. The very similar concept happening in Interstellar. I had a couple of other examples as well, but I didn't mind it. I didn't mind getting caught up in the emotion of the strangeness of what happens when he falls into the singularity or the black hole or the wormhole or whatever it is at the end. I thought visually it was a real treat, and I thought they did a good enough job that I was surprised to discover where they were peeking into in the 3D construct in the 5D world.
They were also good about anticipating things that you might wonder about in some cases and explaining them. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of was wondering if he was the ghost. I kind of figured this is where he might end up. I didn't predict that he would end up in that way. But I was already thinking along the lines of like, oh, okay, somebody's going to go through a wormhole and somehow the gravity from the wormhole is going to affect, and that's how the books were falling off the shelves. And so when he gets in there, I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is a 3D representation of that room through time. That's clever, but why would it look like that if they're 5-dimensional beings? And then then the robot says they've created this space so that we can understand it. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Toss. I get it now. This is on purpose. That was a great moment.
And then he went a step
otherwise
farther.
Have been nagging at me.
He went a step farther, saying, "And now for the home audience, we've converted it to 2 dimensions, so they can watch this representation of a 3-dimensional film in which we are in a 5-dimensional space."
The only thing that bugged me about that entire series, because I'm like, okay, that's clever, right? Gravity can move across dimensions, and he's manipulating gravity. And Eileen was like, how was he manipulating it though? And I'm like, well, those were the stretchy things, right? That was that was representing the gravity lines, and he would manipulate that, and that would make the book fall off. I'm like, but how did the watch continue to be affected after she took it out of the room?
I don't know, man. Look, once you get to 5 dimensions, all bets are off as far as I'm concerned. Like, it's like, because reasons, that's why. I'm too busy crying to answer that.
But look, spaceship. And also I'm like, when they, and I think it ended at a great point because of this, and he meets his daughter and she's old, and that was just like, wow, what an amazing way to tell that story about relativity. And using that line of no parent should have to watch their child die in an entirely different context than it is ever usually used.
Well, and plus
but then
also
saying, go back to Brand, I'm wondering, like, yeah, but it's going to take him 7 years to get back to her. Is there any relativistic effect there?
Well, no, the impression I got is that of the 3 worlds, this one was different than the other 2, so the rules were different.
Right.
And also, he's in a future version of Earth, and so the ship he stole presumably is more fuel efficient and faster and superior.
But I was doing some math because they said it's been 120 years. I'm like, well, then Brand, he was in the wormhole for essentially, I don't remember what the math ended up being, but he was in the wormhole for, let's say, around 50 years. So Brand hasn't been in the wormhole. She's going to be 50 years older than when he left.
No, well, I mean, by definition, because they show Brand as a young woman, you know, first of all, understand they hired smarter scientists to write this stuff and to construct
No,
a
I
scenario.
know, but I'm wondering if, because they didn't violate it. They said, you should go to Brand. Brand will definitely be alive by the time he gets there. And they showed Brand after she has set up her camp.
Yep.
That's fine. They didn't show him and her getting together, so it doesn't violate any science of any kind. But if it's 120 years after his birth on Earth, then that's, you know, Brand was around his age, right?
Well, no. Keep in mind, 120, for example, on the ocean planet, 120 years on Earth.
We're not on the ocean. Brand's not on the ocean planet.
I know, but they never defined the relativity set of rules on this third planet. So if they are similar to...
It was 23 years on the ocean planet. Okay, so let's say he's 38. And then 23 years on Earth go by while in the hours that he's on the ocean planet.
No. It was. Oh wait, no, you're right. Okay,
yeah, it was 23.
I see.
So that would make him 63 if he had stayed on Earth. And then it's going to take him 7 years to get, you know, from
All
Earth.
Right, I have. If you need to massage this in your mind, let's say.
Basically, what they're saying is from the point you entered the black hole, 57 years have gone by.
Yeah.
And Brand wasn't in
57 Earth years.
Yeah.
Not...
And from that point he went into the black hole, Brand was no longer under relativistic effect.
Well, maybe, okay, and they never say so, but if you need to massage it in your mind, just say that third planet, they didn't know at the time, but they later discovered that it's 1 billion years per second on that planet. And so she definitely hasn't aged at all. You know, it's like,
I just, you know, I'm just wondering how deep his relationship is with her. That's all. Like,
I guarantee you
I
guarantee you somebody's the chat room's howling. It's a movie, but it's like,
yeah, no, Richard, yeah, yeah.
Not
You're
to
right.
me, it's not.
But that's why we're talking about it. Otherwise, it would be just go see it. You'll find out what happens.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you what. Let's breaking it into categories. Believability, a couple of pills you got to swallow for me, and apparently for you as well. Visually, I think we could agree it is a treat from beginning to end. I don't think there's a single frame of that movie that's not gorgeous, right?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's both elegant, haunting, well shot, great, and great acting.
Haunting is a great word because I really will go back to this space over and over and over again in my mind. It's good. It's a great movie. Great set pieces. Plus surprise Matt Damon. I don't know how I didn't know he was in this movie.
I forgot. I remember when they first announced casting, going like, "Whoa, they got Anne Hathaway, McConaughey, and Matt Damon," and there's a couple other big names in there as well. And then I forgot all about Matt Damon being in there. But yeah, surprise Damon. Also, what a jerk that man guy was. Wow.
Well, no, he was the best of us, Tom. He was the greatest of all of our
he was
doctors.
Then he fell.
Also a coward,
fell,
apparently.
Like into the cloud.
Even knowing and assuming what was going to happen, like I just felt this impending doom as they walked farther and farther out. I mean, I don't know. It's just well shot. I mean, the guy knows how to make a movie.
Well, and I love the idea that the clouds are frozen. That was a nice little touch when they're flying under the puffy cloud and they knock a piece off.
And then you're like, wait, what? And they were like, frozen clouds. And, I was
then
like,
they land
thank you.
and they're like, and he's like, even though it turns out to be a lie, he's like, down on the surface. I'm like, oh, wait, they're not on the surface?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, they're on like overcast. They landed on the overcast cloud cover. That's amazing.
Yeah, man. I'm going to have to see it again for sure.
Well, thank you all for spoilering up with us. We hope you enjoyed it. Support us on Patreon. If you got a little value at patreon.com/Cordkillers. We'll see you next time.
Check your credit cards.